Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Courtney Gardner, a marketing coordinator here at Proficient, and I'm excited to kick off today's webinar, Top 5 Oracle Cloud Solutions for Finance Transformation. Time permitting, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the event, so please type your questions into the Q&A tab located to the right of your screen, and feel free to do that at any time. Two questions often come up with our online events. Can I get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording? The answer to both questions is yes. We will email you with information on how to access both the slides and the recording following today's event. Now, without further delay, I'd like to hand it over to Stephen Bricker.
So I'm going to be emceeing this presentation today, and we're going to be hearing from experts across our Oracle practice. These folks have over a collective experience of over 100 years of Oracle and are leaders within our Oracle ERP group and EPM group and analytics across their respective practices. From an agenda perspective, we definitely want to focus in on really the top Oracle solutions for finance across the platform. And across these areas, I definitely want to encourage folks to ask questions. We'll do our best to weave them in to the presentation, and if not, we'll, like was mentioned, review them at the end of the presentation. To start off, we're going to talk a little bit about Proficient. And Proficient is an exciting company. We've had and continue to have a lot of growth. We're publicly traded. We're very acquisitive. And one of the things we're most proud of is our repeat business rate. We really feel like we're the best balance of kind of a breadth and depth and capability and scalability with the boutique type expertise across all of our respective technologies and areas where we cover. As far as our footprint, we're really global in delivery. We have offices across, like we always like to say, everywhere where pretty much there's a football team. We have a brick and mortar office, but definitely are used to working remotely as well, and then partner up with our Proficient owned and operated global delivery centers across the world. Diving in a bit more to our Oracle practices and expertise, we have pillars within Oracle. They're an enterprise partner of ours that focus in and cover all aspects of ERP, so that obviously includes financials, as well as supply chain management, human capital management, enterprise performance management, analytics, and training. We recognize a couple things. One is that all of these solutions being Oracle can be implemented. We often implement in a hybrid fashion because large organizations often have a myriad of different solutions that we need to integrate with. And then also we do more than just, as we like to say, have guardrails around you. We absolutely do the implementation, but we also do the front-end strategy, and we also do the back-end knowledge transfer as well as managed services and training. So it's really a complete practice and solution with over 3,000 deployments to date over the last 20 years. The next thing we're going to be doing is hearing from, is really looking at the Oracle Cloud solutions across these different areas. All of these different, whether we're talking about operational finance, strategic, including closing consolidations, consolidated actuals, how data quality and master data look across the enterprise, and how you could leverage a centralized platform to manage and govern that. Looking into the FP&A office, budgeting and forecasting, as well as analytics and visualization. And all of these solutions can be implemented and deployed independently. So a lot of our clients, we've always talked about the start anywhere approach. We could start anywhere, but we could also provide really what Oracle offers as the most complete platform across all of these areas. So the first of our different top solutions for Oracle Finance is really centered around Oracle ERP Cloud, and we're going to hear from Matt Mikowski here, who is one of our leaders in our Oracle ERP group. So Matt, tell us about the latest innovation in Oracle and really what they've introduced in the cloud and what makes it unique and really what Gartner would say a top solution.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I hope you can hear me. I personally think that of all the 5 solutions we're presenting here today, and these are the top 5, that mine is number 1. but don't take my word for it. Let's take Gartner's word for it. So the Gartner group has been doing this survey for I don't know how many years, and Oracle has, and I know this is very hard to see, this is a very small, the print on this is very small, but Oracle has been for several years now the leader in cloud applications on the ERP side. Upper right-hand corner of the quadrant, to orient you to this, again, I know it's small, going from left to right, it's completeness of vision, right? So furthest to the right, the further you are to the right, the better, right? Completeness of vision, and Oracle's furthest to the right, you'll notice. And then going up is ability to execute. So the farther up you are, the better off you are. So Oracle's also furthest up. So I kind of wish that they would ask what consultant, you know, if they would do a measurement on what consultants think. We would tell you that this is, after working on EBS, not to disparage that product, but after working on that and implementing that for many years, cloud is certainly a superior product to implement, much faster to implement, easier to implement than EBS ever would be. And we're able to do these implementations in, you know, depending on the size and scope, but let's say, you know, 2/3 of the time it might take to do an EBS implementation. Oracle has taken, you know, one of the things that they've done is they've had 30 years of experience in obviously in ERP, and they've taken feedback from thousands of customers over the years, and they've really incorporated best practices into the new product, into the cloud. So they didn't just take EBS and just, you know, put a new name on it and stick it in the cloud like on someone's server. They re-engineered the entire product from top to bottom and incorporated a much streamlined approach to implementing it. To Stephen's point about, you know, what's kind of new, and, you know, from an implementation perspective, implementing it's entirely different. From a user perspective, we'll talk about that on the next couple of slides. Just a couple of other points here. So the competitors on this slide that you probably can't read because it's too small, you'll see Workday, NetSuite, SAP, Sage, and Microsoft. These are not small companies, and Oracle's, you know, kind of eating the lunch on that. From an implementation standpoint, again, because the technology is because it's been completely re-engineered around best practices, we spend a lot less time on the system and more time with the business on business process design. It's one of the strengths of the way that we implement, very strong in our methodology, because while there's fewer technical hurdles, there's probably more change management, I'll say that. So we spend a lot more time on the business process design, because there's the technology side of the implementations are far easier than EBS. And just one last point I'd like to make on this is, having done this for so many years, I can tell you that no one's ever asked me to move from Oracle to Microsoft or Oracle to Workday or anything like that. But we do get plenty of calls to move from, you know, those other competitors into Oracle. So that's just been my experience.
Thank you, Matt. I was going to ask, you know, just if you could highlight one or two just in terms of Oracle innovation. Like, what have they incorporated into Cloud ERP, which maybe didn't exist in other?
Yeah, so definitely one thing that they've brought in is Essbase into the underlying technology for all general ledger and financial reporting. And why that's so important is because that's uniform now across the entire platform, right? That extends into the EPM applications. Essbase is a tool that most accountants probably know. They might access the Essbase database through a tool called SmartView. So that has completely changed financial reporting capabilities. Basically, it's a cube, right? And that is not in the EBS product. And that is something that is in the underlying framework of the application. The other thing Oracle has done is what's called embedded in the product from end to end Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence. From the moment you access the product, all the things that you need to know and all the things that you need to do are in front of you, right? So when you log into EBS, or, you know, I'll call it some of these legacy ERPs, when you log in, what you usually get is a menu, right? You know, I click here to enter journals, and I click here to create reports, or you know, so forth. You know, click here to enter invoices. But what you get is actionable dashboards, and we'll see those in a few minutes. So just to kind of wrap up on the slide here. So Oracle, just in summary, they're blazing the trail ahead of all its competitors, and we kind of spoke to that quite a bit. They've invested billions of dollars with 30 years experience in ERP. Why is it, thinking this through for purposes of this audience, why is it an advantage to the people on this call to move to the cloud versus staying on-prem in EBS? I'll say a couple things. One is supportability. You're going to be on the same platform that everyone else is on, which means Oracle can support you much better. It's a modern user experience, and every quarter you get updates, not upgrades, but updates, incremental updates, that some of which you can opt in, and if you don't want it, you can just leave it opted out. Certainly the total cost of ownership in terms of hardware and infrastructure, I'm sure is going to be a much lower cost. But lastly, I think the point I want to make is, if you imagine the air traffic control system without air traffic control, that's kind of like BBS, right? Everyone is plotting their own route. Imagine if all the aircraft in the skies were just plotting their own route. Everyone on EBS that has their own environment, Oracle can't really support that too well, right? That's you open service requests, they have to do tons of research. They ask you to do tons of research because you might be on 11i, or you might be on release 12.01 or 12.1.2 or 12.2. But in the cloud, that's air traffic control. Everyone's on that same platform. So I think that's real important to being in the cloud is the support is much faster. If you have issues, it's much faster.
Thanks, Matt. A lot of folks may also ask about, just in terms of how security is handled, or Oracle, how governance and controls and things like that are handled in the cloud.
Yep. So security, I'll call it certainly best in class. Oracle has implemented a best in class security model, way superior to what they've done in EBS. In EBS, you might be familiar if you're an EBS user that you have what's called a responsibility, and you might have a general ledger user, you might have an accounts payable user. But in cloud, they've grouped what's called a role and functions into those roles, so that an accountant might need inquiry access into AP and AR, but they don't actually do those things. And they might access general ledger and run financial reports. That's now called a role. So roles are predefined in the system, and then you get what's called data access to access, the US versus, let's say, the UK ledger. But additionally, to the point about security, aside from what's on this slide, which talks about, the ease of integrating with single sign-on, or, certainly the advanced security controls, which we used to call GRC, that can help you with fraud detection and defining certain business events that point out where fraud is, or where you might have instances of people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I think the more important thing around security that people are concerned with is they're afraid to go to the cloud because they think the data might not be safe. And, and they shouldn't think it's safe just because Oracle thinks it's safe. Oracle is SOC 1, 2, and 3 certified, and they're audited by Ernst & Young. So the SOC certifications have pillars around security, privacy, confidentiality, processing integrity, data availability. They look at access controls, two-factor authentication, encryption, all these things. This is what any SaaS application, any company that's offering a SaaS application, they must comply with. So it's very safe. And just on an anecdotal point, we do have a customer that all their on-prem systems were invaded by ransomware, and the cloud was not. Whoever was going after them did not hit their Oracle applications in the cloud. So Oracle definitely has their stuff down pretty well when it comes to security. And we haven't heard any cases of anywhere where any of our customers need to be concerned. You can put additional security on it by whitelisting it, right? And so that someone has to be behind your firewall in order to access the cloud environment if you choose.
Thank you, Matt. I've heard you mention, just in terms of quickly and accurately close and reconcile your subledgers. Can you describe for us why it's better than maybe other solutions within Oracle?
Yeah. So when you're let's say EBS, and you're trying to close subledgers, it's all reporting based. There's no workflow to it. You have to follow very set procedures, and it has to, either case needs to be documented, but I mean, like, it's incredibly rigid, and there's nothing driving you. You have to know the sequence. You have to say, now I'm going to run accounts payable trial balance, accounts receivable trial balance, general ledger trial balance. Now I'm going to reconcile AR to GL, and I'm going to do a roll forward. I'm going to do fixed assets now. In the cloud, all these tools for reconciling are at your fingertips, and you don't have to wait till the end of the month because they are on what's called a dashboard or an infotile, and there's some samples on the next screen, but we can just stay here for a moment before we go there. So in terms of the overall close process, it's much cleaner, it's streamlined, and you can monitor it daily, and you can immediately see exceptions. So if you wanted to just real quick flip to the next slide, just give an example of what that looks like. And again, I know this is probably pretty small, but what you have here, these are Infotiles that are provided to users based on their role. So kind of going back to best-in-class security, it's not just about access and what you can do, but also the dashboards that they are able to see. So on one of these dashboards on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see what the AP to GL and AR to GL reconciliations look like pretty much in real time. So you can see one is perfectly in balance and one is just slightly out of balance. And that's probably because some accounting process wasn't run, or maybe a manual journal entry was run. And you can drill into that. You can actually click on it and drill into that and see a next level of data. To the right, it shows a reconciliation report, how AR reconciles to GL, and each number has a hyperlink, and you can drill down on those numbers. So the reconciliations are automated. When it comes to costing and having hundreds of inventory organizations, that is now all moved into the accountant's arena for closing the month with what's called a costing book or a cost book. And instead of closing 100 inventory organizations, you're doing one costing close. So that streamlines, it kind of removes operations from the picture of the month end, so you don't have to worry about 100 inventory orgs. It's just one cost org, and you can deal with one set of errors, one set of issues at one time. Additionally, the other kind of critical item. Yep, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention we just have one more visual, and curious, how does what this data we're showing here looks like?
Yeah, so that's an accrual, a month-end accrual dashboard. And if you go back a slide, I'll kind of show the summary page. Just go back one. That bottom left-hand slide, that's kind of the summary of your AP and purchasing accruals. Are they in alignment, right? On the next slide, if you were to click on those, then it would show the drill down, and you can see what the purchase order is, what the item is, what the net accrued amount is, and it's hard for people to probably to justify or think, hey, Oracle's got the accruals right. But just another kind of quick anecdote on that is we did have a customer, went live on the system, and at their first month end, kind of freaking out about the accruals. They said they seem like way too high, especially compared to what we did last year and what we accrued last year. Everything was kind of compared to last year. We actually analyzed every single accrual in the system, and it turned out to be right. And when they went back and looked at their accruals that they were doing manually, they turned out to be off by 20 or 30%. So Oracle, if you're using receiving for expenses or inventory, it does very accurately capture your accruals. And these drill downs are available to reconcile that on a daily basis.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. Just in terms of having your financials and GL in order, now you need to complement it with really an integrated way to deploy data quality. Rami, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so Stephen, this is one of the things that we come across almost every implementation we do, right? We always have to deal with the integration of not just data, but master data as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit further out. One of the things that we always focus on when we are looking at the integration piece, there are various different ways of integrating the EPM products with the ERP or any other solutions, right? We have the EPM integration agent that allows you to connect with not just the EBS on-prem or any other data sources like data warehouses or flat file stores or anything like that you have, but there are also connectivities within cloud EPM stack that allows you to connect with HCM from a workforce perspective or cloud ERP, including some subledger details. And this is one of the points that Matt had mentioned early on, right? That being in cloud, one of the biggest advantage you have is there is a constant improvements coming out every month from the EPM perspective and every quarter from ERP perspective. And one of the implementation, one of the latest implementation of technology was to not just allow you to connect to the GL Cube in cloud ERP, but also to go to the subledger data to get data from CapEx or projects modules as well. A couple other things to mention here from a perspective of integration within the EPM tools. There are pre-built components already that are part of the EPM stack. And then from an automation standpoint, we have EPM Automate, which is a very straightforward command line utility, but we also have REST API that people can use to automate their solutions and use their standard ERP or standard ERP based or some other based automation tools that they have on-prem.
Thank you, Rami. So we have our integrations and kind of data quality across multiple different applications, and a lot of our customers really start, especially when they have disparate sources, with consolidations. And so Matt, can you talk to us a little bit about how Oracle ranks in the area of closing consolidations?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. So consolidations, Oracle Cloud Close and consolidations, it's part of what they refer to as the EPM suite of products or Enterprise Performance Management. And so versus ERP, which is much more transactional based and is kind of self-standing, the EPM suite of products can be used with a variety of source systems, including multiple ERP systems. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then when we talk a little bit about budgeting and forecasting, we'll cover a little bit more on the EPM side as well. So as we look at the financial consolidation and close suite of products within Oracle, there's a couple of components of it, but just holistically looking at the improvements in it over the older on-premises applications, it is considered a leader in the Oracle, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So similar to what Matt Mikowski showed you with ERP, it is the top most right-hand corner, and the reasons are really some of the things that I have listed here. So what they did is they looked at the on-premise applications and all of the customizations and additional work that people were doing to those applications, and they pre-built that into the new applications. So really what you have is pre-built configurations that will allow you to have out-of-the-box functionality that you used to have to do additional customization on to get there. And this can include cash flows, roll forwards, ownership management, things like that. Another benefit is that they looked at, the world is getting smaller, and smaller organizations and companies are going global. And so they looked at ways to make the applications more global and have the ability to incorporate foreign operations. So now you can consolidate globally with your gap-driven applications that will do your eliminations, your translations, things like that, but then you can also report for IFRS. So there's the ability to capture foreign operations, report locally there, incorporate it into your U.S. operations, and then also do that IFRS reporting that you may want to be able to do. And then also kind of hand in hand as we look at the pre-built applications, they've really added this intelligent processing automation, or basically the ability to automate certain rote practices and things that people used to do. And so as Rami just mentioned, talking a little bit about the integrations, a lot of those integrations now are automated. The data will load, the data will eliminate, it'll consolidate, it'll aggregate, and then you can do further processing on the data, basically lights out, so that you don't have to have someone standing there waiting for a process to finish to kick off the next one. Another reason why it's one of the leaders is also for the compliance and transparency and some of that security and things similar to what Matt Makowski was talking about with ERP. You can now enable audit compliance so that you have this enforced segregation of duties, so you can limit what people can do by certain roles. You can limit the functions that they can do, and you can limit the data that they can see. You can also limit the data that they can transact on. So you may let them see data from another division but not be able to do anything with that data. So it's a lot more flexible, and it'll allow you to kind of manage your applications much better. Looking at
Thank you, Matt. So what are the different areas really within the platform that the Financial Close Suite offers?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So really there's kind of 4 pillars that we look at. We've got the financial consolidation, which is really the main pillar, which will allow you to perform consolidations from multiple ERP systems. So it can be SAP, it can be Oracle, it can be an Excel file that you load. Very simple, easy to do to integrate those and to perform consolidations. And then there's also tax reporting, which uses the same integrated data that you use in the financial consolidation and close suite. So you've got the benefit of having that data available, and it changes in your tax reporting application as it changes in the FCC application. Then you also have the financial close management application, which allows you to really manage how you perform your close. So for a smaller organization, they may not necessarily need this, but definitely for a larger organization with multiple offices, there's a lot of benefits to be able to set the steps, track the steps, see where your bottlenecks are in the close, and actively manage that instead of trading emails and continually asking, hey, are we there yet? Are we done? And then the final pillar is account reconciliations, which once again, it can integrate to any application, and you can load general ledger data or you can load subledger data and have it automatically perform reconciliations with certain criteria. So all of these can be implemented together or by themselves, and we see customers, so they might do 3 and 4 together. It's kind of dipping their toes into the cloud. It's easy to do, it's scalable. Other customers, they may want to do the consolidation component because that's where their biggest need is, but it's very flexible in how you can implement these products.
How does cloud ERP differentiate from the kind of the EPM suite?
Yeah, so great question. It's really kind of the next logical step. The ERP suite of products, very, very powerful, as Matt talked through, but EPM really just kind of takes it that next step. And so how EPM can really help people with those next steps, it is purpose-built. When you look at doing consolidations, EPM products, financial closing consolidations, is purpose-built to take data from disparate systems, get it into a common language, and to be able to allow an organization to use that data to perform their consolidations. So you get everyone in your organization really on that same platform and talking the same language. And so whether you're centralized or decentralized, it's going to help you understand what is happening elsewhere within your organization using similar metadata or your chart of account structure, and similar processing helps you to do that. So really it'll help you by eliminating those manual processes that people are constantly doing. It will automate certain things, including your consolidations, translations, ownership management. You can generate reports automatically, either boardroom ready reports, very formal reports, or if you want to do analytical querying, there's tools to do both of that. Within the account reconciliation suite of products, you have the ability to auto-reconcile certain accounts. If an account has had no activity or if it's had minimal activity within a certain parameter, it'll automatically reconcile, and no one really has to look at that. There's also automated workflows so that once I create a journal entry, it'll move it to the next step for either approval or rejection. If rejected, it will come back to me and I have to provide additional information.
I think that on the, kind of integrating things together, we have to think about data quality and how that influences the other applications. Rami, tell us about the MDM solutions within Oracle EPM.
Well, thanks, Stephen. That's a that's a good segue into the master data component, right? So, as we talked about ERP and EPM, certain components of the EPM, what most of our clients during this implementation or life cycle of the implementation, we come across these questions all the time. How do we manage our master data across all these different platforms and different solutions? And Oracle Enterprise Data Management, or EDM as it's known as now, is the best-in-class solution for that kind of master data management across different platforms, across different solutions, not just from an Oracle standpoint, but also supporting other solutions that are not related to Oracle. If you don't mind going to the next slide, what EDM does bring to the table in terms of master data management is a master data governing and the hierarchy management from a top-down approach, right? It is secured, it is collaborative approach that allows people to jump in and out of the whole process of master data management, whether they are just going to be informed, or are they going to be taking action on that particular item, or are they going to be actually approving the processes. And all of these workflows are then driven by policies, the policies that you define, and these policies are just-in-time policies. So if you have some change this week or this month that is different than the change from last month, and different set of people need to be taking part in that process of approving and processing that change, those policies are in place specifically for those time frames. So that allows you to do a very robust data management. In addition to that, those same policies are also securing your data in a way that if you have multiple GL segments, or you have some non-GL segment related master data in your system, you don't want people to see all of that different components. You can give them access to specific applications. So somebody who's doing planning administration would only see the impact of whatever master data is being updated only on the planning solutions, right? And as the previous slide was showing, and as Matt also earlier alluded to, like all these other EPM stack solutions, they are all well integrated. There are out-of-the-box solutions, out-of-the-box adapters for both Cloud ERP, for FCCS, which is the consolidation tool, for planning. All of this out-of-the-box solution means that when you set up those applications in this master data solution, you are not having to create multiple options and properties and different approaches of creating and maintaining that master data. So with that, in my opinion, EDM brings a lot to the table in terms of replacing the legacy solutions that you have on-prem, or in most cases where we go and implement these things, people don't even have master data solutions. And bringing all of these things together and showing them that how quickly something can be implemented with security, with governance, allows them to support their other applications that are being deployed at the same time.
Thanks, Rami. And we always like to say that the master data and EDM and metadata management is foundational in terms of the way that you kind of bottoms up put together your process and platform, and these tools that come into it, like budgeting and forecasting, are some of the primary functions in an organization that could feed off of those, from a ripple down effect. That metadata will go right into EPM planning. So, speaking of, in terms of budgeting and forecasting, how does Gartner and the industry look at Oracle solution in this area?
That's a great way to segue into this planning solution piece. I was just speaking with our GM a couple of days ago, and he mentioned that Gartner just came out with a new quadrant for the FP&A processes. And believe it or not, Oracle is in the top right corner. Oracle has the best solution from an FP&A standpoint. They have been doing this kind of FP&A supported, FP&A-like solutions for such a long time. They acquired Hyperion, the technology that Matt McCaughey referred to early on, Essbase being the foundation of this whole planning solution, makes it one of the best, if not the best solution from a FP&A standpoint, right? And what makes it even better, if you go to the second slide after this, is that Oracle's approach to framework and framework-based solutions that are being pushed out on all of these different components that we are talking about today, right? ERP, Matt mentioned that, framework solutions for that. FCCS, Matt Hopkins mentioned that as well. On planning side, you have 4 distinct framework components that are part of the enterprise planning solution. Financial being where you're going to be doing your cash flow and balance sheet forecasting in addition to your P&L forecasting, which seems to be most common forecasting methodology in most companies is let's just do P&L forecasting. Everybody wants to go and do the revenue and expense forecasting, but then Oracle took it a step further and brought it and brought it up with balance sheet and cash flow forecasting. In addition to that, they took this whole process a step further, added trend and driver-based forecasting methodology and predictive algorithms, multiple predictive algorithms that allow you to look at the historical data and trends. And we'll see a couple of charts and graphs and stuff like that further down in the next screen, where it actually shows you the predicted path from both perspectives. Yeah, there it is. If you go back to that, I wanted to talk about the other 3 main components from a planning perspective, really quickly wrapping up so I can give some time back to Miles on analytics side. In addition to financials, we have workforce. Workforce forecasting solution is, I think, the best in the market because it's not just from the finance perspective, but it also accounts for a lot of the HR related activities, right? Strategic workforce modeling and stuff like that. And all of those components are then tied back into not just the financial module, but also into the projects module. You know, talking about the projects module, you are doing your capital expenditure planning and you're standing up a large asset, and that standing up that large asset means you have hired a bunch of people to work on that asset, and what not part of their salaries and budgets are being capitalized and what are part of the OPEX components and stuff like that. All of those pre-built rules and components that are available to you in the enterprise planning solution allows you to use the workforce and the CapEx and the projects tools together and bring all of that data back into the financial systems, right? And then and all of that integrated solutions that already are there from a framework perspective means that you have a very quick deployment cycles. That being said, one of the other things that we see all the time is not everybody is ready to implement all 4 solutions, right? In most cases, we go in there and either start them with either workforce or the finance solution, and then add on these other components as the need arises and as the process is mature. If you go to the next slide, where we're basically just talking about what makes these planning solutions the best one, right? As everybody has mentioned before, there is a unified interface across all cloud platforms, not just in ERP or FCCS, but across all the cloud platforms that we're talking about today, right? They are all very well integrated and aligned in terms of not just the business processes, but also integrated from technology standpoint, as Matt earlier stated, right? Essbase being part of the ERP solution, as well as being part of the consolidation solution and part of the planning solution, and also is a very core component of the analytics solution as well, right? And then, as I mentioned earlier, automated or manual predictive processes that are already there, predefined. All you have to do is just configure them, provide a little bit of detail as to how that prediction model needs to work, and you are back up and running from that perspective, right? One big component that I forgot to mention is the strategic modeling, which we have implemented at multiple clients where it just allows you to do the long-range planning as well as looking at, strategically from a financial standpoint, how different approaches are going to affect your overall budgeting cycles and overall budgeting profiles and so on and so forth. So that kind of brings me to the close of the planning discussion there, Stephen.
Thank you, Rami. And like I always, like to say that, the budgeting and forecasting, solutions allow you to really have forward-looking analysis and don't just capture and aggregate the data, which they do well, but also manage the process.
Not everybody is ready to go cloud all at once, right? People want to take baby steps sometimes before they start running with the cloud solutions. And the core nature of all of these solutions is that they are independent of each other. You can implement EPM, one or two processes for EPM before you go and do something on the cloud solution, for instance, right? Or you implement EDM, get your master data all squared away before you start talking about ERP implementation or start talking about consolidation or budgeting implementation. So that whole process and your ability to take baby steps before you start running full speed is a great plus point from an Oracle Cloud perspective.
Thank you, Rami. Analytics is the area that always the vision was. I heard, when I started a career with Oracle 20 years ago, everybody's going to go into the CFO is going to have their dashboard with all their KPIs first thing in the morning while they're drinking their coffee, given the entire health of the organization. So Miles, how does Oracle help deliver that, and where is Oracle ranked in this space?
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. I'll tell you, it's been wonderful to hear about all this great functionality, cloud-based functionality. It reminds me of really almost like a financial symphony, all the parts coming together. And, really excited. We are really excited. We think this is a new era of efficiency, automation, and integration. You heard Matt mention a little bit how the cloud is different, and it really is supremely different from a software provider standpoint. In the old days on-prem, Oracle used to need to worry about 10 different operating systems, 8 different databases, 7 different security platforms, and making sure that all work together. Now in the cloud, they're able to own the full technology stack. They're able to own the full technology solution. I know that they're enjoying it from a development standpoint. They're able to focus on functionality and, importantly, integration across the entire cloud application surface area. And we, as consumers, are already reaping the benefits, even though I'm sure we'll look back at this as the early days. So today I'm going to speak about Fusion ERP Analytics. I saw that it only got 3% in the poll. I'm not surprised. It's only been out for about 6 months. So it doesn't have a lot of awareness, but I believe that is going to change fairly quickly once I'm going to talk about that today. Before I get into Fusion ERP Analytics, though, which is an application, I want to talk about the platforms on which Fusion ERP Analytics run. And there's 2 that we want to call out. The first is Oracle Analytics Cloud. And Oracle Analytics Cloud recently was named a visionary in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Analytics and Business Intelligence. And the reason for that is Oracle now has a very, very strong balance of enterprise governance and self-service. You heard Stephen mention the Zoom boardroom and everybody looking at the Hollywood Square Zoom thing and pointing out, why is your number different than my number, and all of that. Well, that is what happens when you don't have enterprise governance. Oracle was always very, very strong at that, but they needed to have self-service. And now they've got a wonderful, flexible, easy-to-use self-service with advanced visualizations. They've gone even further with one-click forecasting, advanced analytics. The other thing that Oracle has done and is able to do with this new cloud platform, behind the scenes, unbeknownst to you, they've built in machine learning. So it helps you do things. Like if you upload a data set with a social security number, it's going to suggest to you, hey, do you want to blur this out? When you look at some data and you've got a state, it's going to say, do you want the population? Do you want to know what country it's in? So we call that augmented analytics. There's also machine learning algorithms that you can use for predictive analytics as a regular business analyst. They're just there for the use. The other one is a Gartner Magic Quadrant known as Data Management Solutions for Analytics. You might never have heard of that, but that's all about using a database for analytics. And Oracle is in the far upper right-hand corner. And maybe that doesn't surprise you. Oracle's always had a very strong database. They've now got the autonomous database, which reduces administration and maintenance and reduces costs significantly. Oracle also has a world-class cloud data warehouse. That's an Oracle database, full-blown Oracle database that's been optimized for analytics. And that runs on specialized hardware for extreme performance. Those are called Exadata. So behind the scenes, that's what Fusion ERP Analytics is running on. You can go to the next slide, Stephen.
Thank you, Miles. So Miles, how does the Oracle Cloud help align critical systems by entity, customer, or product for analytics and reporting?
Well, excellent. And I think that's a great lead-in to Fusion Analytics Warehouse because this kind of brings it all together, whether it's Oracle data or non-Oracle data. And this is a complementary solution. You heard Matt talk about reporting in Oracle ERP, which is super robust, so much better than EBS. What I'm talking to you about here is a complementary solution. This Fusion Analytics Warehouse and the modules within this application are complementary. These are for monitoring business. We're looking at your strategic KPIs. And what Oracle has done is created these modules, and when you go with these modules, you get a data pipeline, you get reports, you get dashboards. So very, very quickly, we're talking about 10 weeks or so, you can get up and running on this and maximize the effort that you put into Cloud ERP and get real value out of your data. You can go to the next slide. So what Oracle has done with Fusion ERP, the main presentation of data that they've given you are KPIs, key performance indicators. That's a little different than the past. They're not requiring the analyst to interpret the income statement or the balance sheet. They're giving you these KPIs right away. These are all configurable, and they all come with a small visualization. They come with a built-in target area. So not only will you have the actual for the KPI, but you'll have the target. And then you can put together a set of cards into a deck. So deck of cards, those are Oracle's terms. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't, but that's the way it is. But they have, you can think of it as a dashboard. What you're looking at there is a deck of cards or a dashboard. You can go to the next slide, Stephen. So when I talk to some people about this, say, oh, I get this. This is a high-level strategic scorecard. I get it. Well, that's true, but it's also not true because it's not just a strategic scorecard with all your strategic KPIs automatically calculated and presented for you on a daily basis or even throughout the day if you want to update throughout the day. It also has all the transactions. When they give you this data pipeline, and Oracle owns this data pipeline, they bring over all the transactions, GLA, P, and AR. So the lowest level that you can go to is right there in Fusion Analytics Warehouse. And this is where a lot of the power comes from. You're monitoring your business. You want to understand why profitability is not trending the right way or OpEx is a little bit too high. And you want to drill in. And you want to know the region, the customer, the product. Why is this occurring? Let me drill in. Let me collaborate with my colleagues. Let me talk to them about this. And that's what you get with Fusion ERP Analytics, leveraging the flexibility of Oracle Analytics Cloud. You can go to the next slide, Steve. So this is a very important slide. This is the last slide I'll wrap up with. On the left-hand side in the red, you see Oracle Managed. And this is brand new, and this is a result of the Oracle Cloud and what Oracle can now do with respect to the cloud and with respect to integration. So starting at the left-hand side at the bottom, let's say you're implementing Oracle Cloud ERP and you decide to implement Fusion ERP Analytics. You're going to get a package data pipeline. Oracle's going to own that pipeline. Any issues with that pipeline, Oracle owns. They're going to give you a package schema. That's a set of architected tables where the data will land once it's extracted out of Cloud ERP. They'll give you a package semantic model. You may not use that term, but that's a very, very important layer. That's a logical layer that tells the analytics engine how those tables are related to one another, what columns are in common, how you can join them together. Just like you might do if you have 5 or 6 Excel sheets and you wanted to VLOOKUP or link them together. It's more or less the same thing. So that's kind of a thin logical layer, almost the brains of the whole thing. And then you get KPIs and dashboards. And Oracle owns that entire red part. And what they're saying is, we own it. When we enhance or upgrade Cloud ERP, we're going to make sure that that data pipeline does not break. When we update Fusion ERP Analytics, we add a new subject area. We come along with fixed assets, not just GLAPAR. We're going to make sure that that package data pipeline works in the fixed assets data. So that's really exciting. On the right-hand side, and I'm going to wrap up here, you can bring in your own data. You can customize that framework. You can do KPIs, reports, and dashboards on your own data, on your own non-Oracle ERP data. And through the framework that Oracle gives you, you're never going to have to do an upgrade again. So that's a significant and massive differentiator for the cloud. Never upgrading again. If you've been through an upgrade, you know it's not the most exciting project you'll ever do. Here, you don't ever have to upgrade if you embrace the cloud. You just kind of get the continual improvements across your cloud ERP, your data pipeline, and your reporting. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. And that's actually a good segue into the kind of recap in terms of if you're attending this, looking at Oracle Cloud, like Miles mentioned, it will be the last upgrade that you ever do. And Oracle has a way to manage those upgrades and make them seamless for you. The other thing that, for customers, they're accelerated solutions. Like Matt mentioned early on with ERP, there's out-of-the-box process flows. You could start anywhere, like the other Matt Hopkins mentioned, in terms of, if account reconciliations is a pain point or challenge, or maybe managing a certain component in the financial close. And really, just the overall, individual pillars sum up to form this platform that has best of breed. As you can see from the Gartner ratings and from, as independent consultants, we implement a lot of different technologies, and we have success continually year over year with Oracle. Perficient's here to help in terms of helping you navigate, the priority of these different areas and how to best incorporate in your specific environment. And we know that every environment's unique.